there, Andy. Are you there, Andy?
Right, I've just turned everything on now. Okay, I'll just thank you for telling us it's going to be recorded. We'll open the meeting. I do believe that the media will be there as well. So a call for apologies. Any apologies? No apologies? When it comes to confirming the minutes, if you can, instead of saying aye or yes to agreeing with the minutes, just say your name so that can be recorded. And the same if you don't agree, just those for, and say your name, those against, and say your name, so everyone knows what's happening with everything. So, if we go to page 6, Extraordinary Environment Hearing Committee minutes held on the 30th of June. Someone like to move we receive those?
Steffy, Mackay.
Okay.
Northcott,
Seconder, yeah, thanks. Is there any matters arising from those minutes? I intend to go through the minutes separately because there could be some items come up out of any of them. It'd be more efficient to go through the whole lot at once, but I thought people might have something to say. So, all right, if there's nothing from those minutes, all those in favour of adopting the minutes, please say your name.
Aarun.
Bonita.
Reid. Steffy.
Okay. Motion carried. We'll move to the Environmental Hearing Committee minutes held on the 21st of July on page 13. Do we have a mover to receive those minutes or to adopt those minutes?
Aarun.
Thanks, Aarun. Seconder?
Bonita.
Rob.
Thanks, Bonita. Any matters from those minutes? Okay, all those in favour of adopting those minutes, please say your name.
Steffy.
Rob. Northcott. Aarun.
Diana.
Bonita.
Those against? Obviously no one. Motion carried. Okay, Extraordinary Environmental Hearing Committee held on the 26th of July, page 18 in your agenda. Someone like to move we approve those minutes?
Diana.
Thanks, Diana. Seconder?
Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Any matters from those minutes, please?
Through the chair, probably just a comment from Liam Dagg here, Andy. Just to note that there was just a slight delay on the release of that decision due to lockdown. I think you signed off on the paperwork, and then I think a day later we locked down. So just to note that, but I understand the decision's been released to the agent and the applicant.
Okay, no concerns about the delay, is that?
Through the chair, no, it was just more just to note it.
Yeah.
I think there was just a little bit of an issue with transmission, just with people out of the office and paperwork being in different places.
Yeah. Well, I went into my operation under normal and come out under lockdown, so it was quite an amazing coincidence. Okay, page 28. Reconvened Extraordinary Environment Hearings Committee meeting held on the 4th of August. Someone like to move that?
Steffy, Mackay.
Bonita.
Bonita, seconded. Thank you. Any matters arising from that? I haven't got it in front of me, but was that the 435 Manapo Road?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any comments about the decision, or should we keep that in committee? Liam, is there any everyone happy with the decision? I doubt if they are, but
Through the chair, I'd probably keep that in committee, Andy.
yeah. Okay. Don't record that, please. We'll put that in. Thanks. Okay. All those in favour of adopting those minutes, please say your name.
Aaron. Rob.
Diana. Steffy.
Bonita.
Okay. Motion carried. Right, we're going to information reports. Please update investigation of feasibility of a potential commercial composting and or waste facility in South Taranaki. Rebecca, can you just give us an overhead on that, please?
Kia ora koutou. Yep, no worries. This is just an information report giving a bit of an update on the organic waste facility investigations. So we're just about to launch into the feasibility study, looking to sign the contract next week. And that will look at a range of owner-operator models and different scenarios for how such a facility could work, as well as what type of facility we might want to go with, and what the end products could be and where they could be used or distributed. And this information report is just really asking for feedback from councillors. We'll run probably a series of workshops with all councillors and iwi hapu and any other key community stakeholders, but just looking for feedback really on the type of workshop that would be the most useful for councillors.
Okay. Any questions about this report?
Just one, Andy. Rebecca, who's doing the feasibility study?
We haven't actually signed the contract yet, so I'd prefer not to say, because there are two consultants in the mix, and we haven't actually signed the contract yet. So I'd prefer not to say, if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, Rebecca, I mentioned this morning at iwi when this was spoken that New Plymouth's doing a green waste composting situation. Is this different to that, or is it complementary?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair. I didn't realise you meant green waste earlier this morning when you asked that question. Yeah. So this is more for food waste and other organic waste that we don't currently deal with. And New Plymouth do have a food waste collection, but that's the one being shipped to Hampton Downs.
Yeah.
So for their green waste, yes, you're right. That is actually being composted locally, and we have a solution for our green waste as well. But if this facility were to come on board, it would probably take food and green waste, and we would probably combine those wastes into one processing facility just to make it a lot simpler and easier. And the other thing is, this facility wouldn't just be for our domestic curbside waste and the other waste we get through transfer stations. We'd actually be looking to open it up to commercial and industrial players, because the amount of waste they produce is, far more than the domestic waste.
So you're looking at supermarket waste, or like Fonterra, if they do have some cheese that they can't sell, is that the sort of thing that you're looking for?
Yeah, exactly. Any and all organic waste, really. The types of facilities we're looking at would be able to handle all sorts of waste streams, from the type of DAF sludge that Fonterra produce, as part of their dairy production, to chicken waste, to food scraps, to green waste. There's a whole heap of waste sources that it could service potentially.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, Rebecca, just it's interesting that you sort of answered a question in the iwi liaison this morning, was that the facility would be in South Taranaki, and New Plymouth are quite happy with that, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair. They have agreed that it's probably makes most sense for the facility to be located in South Taranaki.
Okay.
So the vast bulk of the really big industrial organic waste streams is in South Taranaki, mainly actually because of Fonterra, because they're the single biggest organic waste producer in the whole region. But we also have, Silver Fern Farms, Ansco, the Okiawa byproducts, and the Eltham Fonterra factory as well, and a whole heap of other ones. So I mean, the feasibility study may show that it might be easier to have a separate facility for South Taranaki and Stratford and New Plymouth based on, the transport costs and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we're going to look at. However, the South Taranaki facility is probably likely to be a much bigger one if that was going to happen, because we would take all the commercial, industrial and domestic waste from across the region.
Cool. I guess though the only ones only sort of like, I used to be organic certified farmer, and the use of organic was actually for certified organic. So I guess it's just the terminology around how are we allowed to use organic if it's not organic, or is it just?
Yeah, I see what you mean. So when we talk about organic waste, it's anything that comes from an organic source, a natural source, I suppose.
A natural source. So it's actually not an organic source, it's a natural source.
No. So, but at the other end, when it goes through the facility and say we end up with a compost at the other end, then there'd be work we'd have to do to get that compost certified organic for an organic farm. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a bit confusing with the organic waste.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just sort of for some people who've gone through the work of being organically certified to see the use of the word of organic when it's not organically certified. But I guess there'd be a mark after that, a trademark mark. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Andy,
Yeah,
through you.
Rob.
Yeah. Rebecca, when we talk about big industrial trade waste, the likes of Fonterra and that, what two parts of this question. A, what do they do with it now? And B, is there any specific way that we need to handle that? Because I'm assuming that their organic waste is of one particular type. Is that right?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So the first part of the question is, so they currently handle their waste. They're actually trucking a lot of it to Wanganui or Foxton at the moment. And then they handle some of it with their settlement ponds and the new treatment facility they're building. And then some of it also goes out through the outfall. But Fonterra have committed to a zero waste goal by 2025. And so they want to actually discontinue pretty much all of those methods that they use now for dealing with that organic waste. And they're looking at building a waste to energy or commercial composting facility themselves. And so we've been working with them. It's likely we'd probably, whatever they do or whatever we do, it will be complementary because they pretty much would underpin the whole project because there's the amount of waste they produce is so large. So they have several different methods they use at the moment, but they're not really happy with any of them. And a waste to energy or a commercial composting facility would be a much better outcome for them because it also contributes to their low emissions targets. So what they currently do with shipping waste and dealing with it in other ways, it actually has still got a really big emissions footprint from that. And so a waste to energy or a commercial composting would completely reduce those emissions footprints as well as the waste side of it. The second question, can you remind me what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
Oh, it was just that their waste would be of a peculiar type.
Yeah. So
Like,
through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
They actually have over 100,000 tons of organic waste per annum. And the average feasibility for a facility to run is you need to have 30,000 or more. So they have a really large amount of waste and it's feasible for them to run a facility just on their own. And the waste they have, you're right, it's very high protein content because it's usually, cheese or milk solids or liquid digested leftover, I suppose, from their processes. So they actually would need complementary waste streams to come in to balance that high protein. And so they, like green waste and other types of food waste with different balance, will be needed to actually make the facility run really well and also to get the best end product out the other end for your composting or whatever it turns out to be.
Yep. Cool. fine. That sounds
Rebecca,
like,
sorry,
good.
Rob.
That's
Rebecca,
fine.
does that mean we can get rid of excess buttermilk through a process like that?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, if a situation like that arose, that type of facility would definitely be able to cope with that kind of a product. Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds great.
Andy, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Rebecca, talking about this reminds me of the Eder and Eltham.
Yeah.
And the stench. And so one of the things that I would need to be reassured of was that the feasibility study identified what mitigations would need to be in place to reduce possible air contamination for the area around that facility. And that would probably be on the mind of a lot of people if we were to introduce something like that into our district. So please ensure that that's really covered.
So, sorry, Rebecca, what you're saying, Steffi, is you don't want it in Eltham. Is that what you're saying?
I don't care where it is if it was dealt properly and professionally and that air contamination is contained. But that's probably the biggest alarm bell that goes in my head when we talk about putting all this stuff together. And it's very not pleasant to live around, eh? So I just, I think that we read that. It's probably one of the hottest things you really need to identify of what we need to do to make sure it doesn't get out into our air.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the types of facilities we're looking at will not ever get to that type of a point where that would be an issue. So we're definitely not going to be looking at open row composting or having materials like that out in the open air, sitting there and putrefying, basically. The type of facility we'd look at would be, an enclosed kind of hot system, which would essentially burn or digest the waste pretty quickly, and the air, the impacts on air are really minimal. And that would be part of the consenting process as well, for a facility like that. But for example, the similar type of facility in Whanganui is actually based in a residential area. I mean, it's an industrial area, but really close to residential sites, similar to somewhere like Glover Road, I suppose, in Hawara. And yeah, they have no smell issues and no odor issues to air because it's all enclosed, and so the entire system is pretty airtight. And that would be the type of system we really would be focusing on, because we definitely don't want to go down the route of something like Urity, return to earth situation, or the previous buttermilk and Eltham situation.
Awesome, thank you, Rebecca.
Any other questions for Rebecca?
Yeah, I just read the chat if I can.
Yes.
Rebecca, the terms of reference for the feasibility study, does that include engaging with iwi to see if there are, because marae have heaps of waste and stuff. Sometimes if there isn't a local piggy man, that's a real issue for disposal.
Kia ora, Bonita. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, a really big focus of this feasibility study is going to be co-design with iwi hapu. So from the very beginning, we would like to sit down and have a wānanga with anybody who's interested on what's acceptable in terms of the type of facility, but also what are the end outcomes, the desired outcomes for if marae or other say Parihaka, if with the new visitor centre, if a place like that wants to send their organic waste to a facility like that they're enabled to do so, and also potentially with options on the other end when there's a commercial compost product that comes out the end, that could be then recycled into papakainga and areas for food production potentially. So that's going to be a really big part of the design phase and exploring all the different opportunities and options that we have from a facility like this.
That's great, because it's got a focus around, it's a Taranaki focus, isn't it? It's not just a South Taranaki focus. Cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? I think it's a great thing you're doing, and support it as much as we can. So keep up the good work. Thanks very much. Do we have to receive this, Sara?
Yes, you do, Andy.
Okay, someone like to move, we receive the
Move.
report. Thanks. Bonita, seconder.
Second.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Aaron.
All in favour?
Bonita.
Rob,
Diana,
Okay, carried. We'll move on to 4.2. We have two reports here. Liam will give you an update on the next two reports. Thanks, Liam.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good day, everyone. It's pretty. That's a pretty hard report to follow, really.
It is.
The first halves of my reports are as boring as, and then we might get Becca just to speak to some of the, I guess, the highlights at the end of the 2 months reports, particularly the Pātea Reforestation project and the natural environment funding. Just really quickly, I guess both of these reports, one represents your year end and one represents year start. That's why we've split them up in the way we have. Not surprisingly, the building consents for year end are high, the high 600s, which I think our building control guys would attest to as just signifies a slightly higher volume than year on year that we've experienced. Statutory compliance is improving. We've got a deadline with IANs to show improvement by the end of October, and we're working well towards that. Not surprisingly, both across the subdivision, land use consent and building consent space, most activities around Harbour and Opunaki, and that's been, I guess, a consistent trend sort of month on month. In both towards the end of last financial year, and it's continued into the new one. I guess with the non-compliance, and it's a point that Bonita, you've raised at previous meetings. I've got Jess, our planning development manager, comes back on Monday from maternity leave, so it's going to free up a bit of my capacity to, I guess, help the compliance officer, Carleen, to start getting back into some of those chunky sort of compliance matters, ones that have sort of come up sort of perennially around Eltham, Bridge Street, Eltham, Glover Road, Nelson Street matters, and a couple out at Opunaki, and not forgetting Pātea Cool Store as well. So there's a bit more sort of capacity and ability to move some of those forward coming soon. As I sort of discussed at iwi Liaison this morning, animal control, the trends that we saw towards the end of last financial year are continuing into July, and that's a real concern for me, and it's a concern for the compliance team as well. So I guess what we're proposing to do, what we were proposing to do until lockdown sort of kicked us to the curb, was start conversations around what processes we needed to review. And the approach there is that we're, I guess, going to come up with some solutions at staff level and bring those out, I guess, to the committees, probably in a workshop style, just to see what input and advice we can get from the governance group. So that'll be, again, probably a little bit lockdown dependent, but that'll be the next little while, the next couple of months. That's probably sort of it for me. I guess one observation, just sort of comparing this lockdown to last one, we've had way more sort of attacks during lockdown alert level 4 than we did last year, and really hard to put a finger on that, whether it's because we're sort of more towards the springtime end of the year, where last alert level 4 it was more sort of getting into winter. But yeah, we have noticed that if we compare lockdowns, this one's been certainly more active in the animal control compliance space, and some of the incidents we've had to deal with, particularly over the last sort of week or so, which has been, I guess, something of just to note and to interest. I'll leave my sort of comments there. I guess I might just ask Rebecca to just quickly chime in about the, I guess, some of the highlights in the environment sustainability space. We've talked already about the commercial composting, but maybe just to highlight the Pātea project, Beck, and the Natural Environment Fund. Thanks.
Thanks, Liam.
Kia ora. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's been a pretty busy kind of couple of months actually, because we're just standing up all the different projects in the environment and sustainability strategy, and I think I put way too many in there. So it's been a busy few months getting everything set up. So yeah, there's a whole heap of things happening. I suppose the two bigger ones alongside the organic waste work is the Natural Environments Fund is open at the moment for applicants to apply to, and that is for any private landowners who are undertaking restoration or protection work of native ecosystems on their land or habitats for native species as well. So that's on the website, and I've been promoting it through my kind of conservation networks and people who work with landowners. We've had some applicants already. It's due to close on the 13th of September, but depending on how many applicants we get in, we may extend it, and depending on COVID levels and things like that, just to give people an extra chance if they haven't gotten around to it yet. And then we've been busy working on council's emissions footprints and work to reduce those, and there'll be a report going to councillors soon around that, hopefully. And then the other really exciting project we've started, and it's already actually been planted, is the first reforestation planting project next to the Patia Cemetery. So we've planted 5,000 native trees over 2 hectares there. And that's one of those projects where every year we'll do an additional 2 hectares, and that area will now be maintained for the next 3 years until the trees get to a big enough point where they can be kind of self-sufficient. And we're hoping to maybe do some little infill planting later on as well if that's needed.
Sounds great. Any questions?
Brilliant. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Rebecca, how big a land holding do you have to be able to apply to this fund?
There's no limit. It's more about it's more about the ecosystem you're protecting. So if it's a native ecosystem and you want to do fencing, planting, trapping, or any other type of restoration work, then it's available to be applied for.
What about if you're you really haven't got an ecosystem to start with and you want to develop one? You've got a bare piece of land.
So that's, through you, Mr. Chair, that's slightly different kettle of fish. There is funding through the regional council to create new ecosystems in areas that probably would have had them previously. But for the Natural Environments Fund, it must be an existing ecosystem with a threat status. And yeah, it's kind of about protecting what's left. So the regional council, though, and Wild for Taranaki and some other groups, they do funding for people who want to create a new native ecosystem.
Terrific. Thank you.
That's good. Rebecca, is that the Natural Environment Fund? Was that the fund that did we put some money towards removing of the weir on the river just around the coast?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, this used to be called the Significant Natural Areas Fund, and we've, council has had it since 2002. And so, yeah, last year, we funded the Glen Road weir removal. The Taranaki Kiwi Trust had an application, and then there were a number of other landowners, I think 5 or 6 potentially, who all got co-funding towards various projects. Some of them were for co-funding fencing, to fence off a native piece of bush or a wetland. Some of them were for helping with QE2 protection work. Some of them were for trapping and weed control and restoration planting. So there was a whole range of things that we funded last year. And so it's just renamed the fund. And we're doing a more public push with it and an open funding round, whereas previously it used to just be, as people applied, we would go to the committee with the applications.
So it's not just for private land then, because that was on a river, wasn't it, the weir? So
it generally has to be on private land, but it can be used for habitats of native species, and that's where the river came into the equation.
Yeah, no, I just wondered about that when you said private land, but no, it's great, and we did have a report on that, I think, at one of the meetings just recently, so that was very good too. So any more questions from Rebecca? Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Is there anything else from Liam's report?
Oh, just a comment through you, Mr. Chair. Liam was talking about the incidences during this lockdown. I've actually noticed, Liam, in just my gatherings over this lockdown, there seems to be a lot more people around, a lot more people not adhering to the rules as last time, if you like. Certainly down where I live, down the beach here, some days it's been like Grand Central Station and people walking and running their dogs as per usual, you know. So I think it's just a case that people really haven't adhered to this lockdown as much as they did last time.
Through the chair, I think the statistics would probably bear that out as well. And in terms of the incidents, a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them occurring on footpaths, animals coming from a property onto the footpath and intercepting with someone else. So yeah, there's a bit of that going on, and yeah, there does seem to be certainly more activity in public spaces during this alert level, and that may have a fair bit to do with it.
Getting a bit warm in the sun, isn't it, Rob?
Oh, yeah, it was getting a bit bright, Andy.
Yeah, me too, mate.
Oh, I just thought that was your halo, Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Liam. Is there anything else
Oh,
from
go
Liam's
on, Bonita.
Sorry? Anything else from Liam's report? Okay, someone like to move we receive the Environment Services activity reports, both of them.
I'm happy to move,
Diana.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks, Rob. All those are in favour of adopting it, please say your name.
Aaron.
Steffy, Mackay.
Motion carried. Thank you. Is there anything else? Do we move into public exclusion now? Someone like to move that?
Happy to move.
Thanks. Thanks, Bonita. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Okay. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Kia ora.
Good stuff.